in the next room had some discussions that started to depart from that subject and to move into areas of definitions of dancing, and I think all of you are aware that that's the session that's going on over there this afternoon. Our topic this afternoon is communication in teaching, and communication is an important topic for all aspects of square dancing, but particularly for teaching. We are pleased to have with us today two very experienced, highly qualified experts in the field of teaching who are also square dance callers. Unfortunately, that's a less common balance than we would wish. But in this case, the first speaker, when I finally relinquish the microphone, will be Ernie Kinney, who's hiding behind me here. Ernie's from Fresno, California, and he's been calling since 1960. He now calls full-time, but for 30 years he was a school teacher and school administrator. He has an active home program and teaches classes every year. He is, as I say, not only a caller, but also an experienced and trained educator, and we believe there is much that can be shared from that profession into our business as well. The other speaker this afternoon will be Jack Murtha, who is the other one sitting here behind me, hiding. Although it is somewhat harder to hide Jack than it is Ernie. Jack's from Yuba City, California, also has been calling almost forever, since 1954, teaching classes regularly throughout this period. And in his other job, he is a consultant on teaching for school systems. His training and his current work is helping teachers to teach better. I, too, have been calling nearly forever and have taught classes throughout that time. At one point, I was teaching 3 classes a year and finally ran out of nights. But interestingly, we counted amongst us and concluded that between us, we have taught more than 200 full classes, which is a fair number. It's possible to have the same experience 200 times and do it wrong forever, but I think we've managed to learn some things, and we hope to be able to share them with you today. Before Jack and Ernie get into the specifics of the mechanics of teaching, I'd like to mention one other important aspect of listening. We tend to think that listening is something we've been doing all our lives. And communication is a two-way street. One part is sending the message, the other is receiving it. And that receiving is a listening process. Unfortunately, I have found in teaching classes, square dance classes, because I'm not a professional teacher at all, I'm in the business world in my other life, but I have found that many times people come into the class totally unfamiliar with the listening process. They have not had any exposure to it. In fact, I have sometimes found people who had listening disabilities, hearing disabilities that they were unaware of. And we have together discovered them, and they've gone off to have them fixed. I've occasionally run into people who have hearing disabilities, know about it, have a hearing aid, and won't wear it because it embarrasses them. You can't teach those people to dance. It doesn't work. But we have helped some people to discover their learning disabilities and cure them. It points up the fact that listening, the process of listening, is an important aspect of the square dance education process. And interestingly, industry has recently, over the last 5 years, come to realize that listening is not a natural talent that everybody has and uses effectively. I clipped an article out of the magazine Today's Office. Its title is The Business of Listening. And it makes a fairly important point about the importance of listening and the cost of not listening in the business world. I'd like to read just one paragraph from that. A costly irony emerges. What managers do most, they are liable to do worst. But managers aren't the only ones affected. Researchers have found that 70 to 80% of most people's waking time is spent communicating. And almost half of that time, 45%, is spent listening. Speaking is next, 30%, followed by reading, 16%, with writing, 9%, trailing. Yet schools, including business schools, train people to read, write, and speak, but not to listen. We don't have any listening training programs or at least not very many. Another industrial awareness is the Sperry Corporation. An example of industrial awareness. Sperry Corporation, over the last 5 years at least, and probably many more, has been on a campaign. Their corporate motto is, "We understand how important it is to listen." And they have run full-page ads in many newspapers advertising the importance of listening, the importance of learning to listen. And they put out this booklet on how important it is to listen, which is available to anybody that writes to it. They'll be happy to send it. It makes the point that the listening process is a 4-step process, starting with, first of all, sensing the sound, which conveys the message. In order to do that, listeners have to be paying attention. They have to discipline themselves to attend to what is being said. Next step in the process is interpreting that message. We tend to come from a different background, we square dance teachers, different background from those who are in our class. The first nights, they don't share our common vocabulary, the one that we take for granted. We use, and for many people, those have different meanings from the ones that we intend. After they have interpreted the meaning, it's necessary to evaluate the message and to, for instance, determine whether they are particularly involved. If we deliver a call to the heads, perhaps the sides are involved, perhaps not. The listener must evaluate the message and determine whether or not it applies to him or her, and then to figure out what the message intends. And the final step in the listening process is the response, which lets us know whether or not the hearing action, the listening action, was completed. It's the feedback that says how well the listening process took place. We tend to take all of that for granted, and I think that's a mistake. In my own teaching, I have come over recent years to pay steadily more attention to that in each step of my teaching. I find that the first 10 lessons are spent very heavily directed toward teaching people to hear, to receive the message, properly evaluate it, and to respond to it. I teach a relatively small number of calls during that period and find that if I have effectively taught them how to teach, I can then teach more easily and more rapidly in the latter sessions of a class series, and we'll get to the end point at about the same time. If not, I spend the whole time fighting their inability to listen accurately and effectively. That's a fairly mechanical side of things. Ernie now is going to talk to you about the lead-up activities, the process that prepares people to learn calls. You will find, as you listen to Ernie and then later to Jack talking about the actual description process and the practice reinforcement element of teaching, that the whole process is a fairly complex one. It's not just a simple, gee, I'll show them and they'll do it. And now to talk about the proper preparation for learning, I'd like to introduce Ernie Kinney.
Thank you, Jim. First of all, we're going to kind of start at the beginning and start with maybe a touch on styling, and then go into lead-ups into teaching different moves. If I could have a demonstration person up here, please. Have one in mind. I will use this and ask for 2 demonstration persons. As you know, in your styling manual or whatever, the styling committee said that everything will stem from the handshake, and that'll be carried cross palms up here, cross palms here, and it all stems from the handshake. But the use of hands are very effectively used in square dancing. For example, if now either dancer, either the right hand dancer or left hand dancer, in the case we're about to show you, it'd be the girl on the right and the boy on the left. For a California twirl, the movement with the hand starts back. This starts people in flowing direction. And these are some of the things you teach. As you're teaching a California twirl, there's nowhere else they can go except in the proper position. The same works with a partner trade. We assume that you might be holding hands with your partner. In this case, whether it's he, she, or we. We're holding hands. See? So the motion would start the same, except in that case they would drop hands partway through and complete the move. And this is a partner trait. So you see how the use of hands can be very effective in teaching. Listening and hearing are two different things. A lot of us listen and don't hear. A lot of us hear and don't listen, supposedly. So we got to see, sometimes if we see things. So we demonstrate to our dancers what we want. Lanny and I will do this and show the dancers what we want and how to use their hands in the different moves. You're so good. No, you're not through yet. Now you're through. So, thank you. So we use these. This was my wife, Lanny, and her friend, Jim. Lanny is truly a person who dances by definition, because in our advanced and our plus and our mainstream classes, she has to be the boy and the girl and the left-hand dancer and the right-hand dancer. And speaking in that area, we tell our dancers when they walk in the door, we assume they know their sex. From now on, we're going to teach you if you're a left-hand dancer, a right-hand dancer, a dancer facing in, a dancer facing out, or a dancer standing on his head or whatever. But we're going to teach you what dance position you're in, and you're going to dance from that position. So we teach by definition in this way, and use very little boy, girl move, or boy, girl moves. And I want to show you in a moment. We'd like to have a square, if I can get a square, of good dancers. I mean, can we get someone who doesn't call? No, we'd like to have 8 volunteers, 4 boys and 4 girls if we can. And while they're coming up here, come on and try it. Come on, Bob, you can try. Here's Lanny, right there. We try to talk people into doing things before they know what they're doing. We're talking about lead-ins now, and we're going to say a lead-in. We're assuming this is the first night of class, and on the first night of class, I try to talk people into doing things, and we play games. I mean, we play. They dance, but we play. They have fun. They laugh, and they make mistakes. We correct their mistakes, but they laugh. We will say we'll assume from this point that we're in a large circle. We're in our big circle. And I want to get them into promenade. Usually I'll start with the big circle and teach all I can from that. And we use their first grand march is that night, coming into squares. But to get them to promenade, how do I do that? We've taught them arm turns. We've taught them walk around a seesaw and a do-sa-do while they're in the big circle. So we're assuming that all of you are facing your partner. And this is their first promenade thing. Shake right hands with your partner. Now, as the boys walk forward into the inside, the girl will make a right face turn and you will join your left hands under your right hands. Would you do that? So they just walk into a promenade position. And we have them promenade and we have them back out, boys back out and face to the middle, do that. And then we have them do this over and over again. And we tell them this is a standard promenade position. When we say promenade, you will take this position. So we've talked them into do it without really letting them know that they've been taught something. And they're dancing, they're having fun, they come into their grand march, they come into the squares. Then we tell them where they are, who they are in the square. Things have changed in square dancing. We used to say, guys, your partner's on your right. We never did tell the girl who her partner was. We assumed she should know. Guys, your corner's on your left. And we never have yet told the girl who her corner is. So we've got an opposite lady, we've got a right-hand lady, but we don't know we don't know what this guy over here is to her. She is his right-hand lady, but what is he to her? We haven't given him a name yet, I guess. If we have, I haven't seen it in print. But we're going to go through now. We're assuming that they know a courtesy turn. They've been taught a courtesy turn. They can do that. We're going to lead into a right and left through. And this is first night. They're not doing a right and left through. They're doing a courtesy turn. We want to get them in different positions and different formations. So we have the heads. We'll assume you're the heads. pass through, and do a courtesy turn. Wasn't that good? Weren't they good? Sides, pass through and do a courtesy turn. See, we're establishing traffic patterns, we're practicing, we're dancing. This gives us a little more choreography. First night, we can do singing calls with this. We can use this in songs. Head circle 4 halfway. They've learned to circle, but have they circled 4 halfway yet? Or have they circled 4? Have they circled 2? Sides, circle 4 halfway. You're home. If we want to use something and get them in a little different formation, we'll say the head gents and your partner step forward. And with your opposite, circle half. What does the definition say? Same heads, pass through and do a U-turn back. What does the definition say for circle? It says 2 to 8 people. We're utilizing the definition to its utmost. We're utilizing 2 to 8. So this is another way you can get them in positions you want to get them in for your own purposes. Now, we're coming to the biggie, square through. And we're using a demo square or a model square, as Jack to demonstrate for you, a model square during the times to show these people the big things. Most things. We show them most things. They're all big to them. So we show them how to do most things with model squares or model couples, or demo squares or demo couples, however you want to use it. We're going to have the heads pass through, face your partner. Pass through, face your partner. Pass through, face your partner. Pass through. What have they completed? Technically, a square through, 4 hands. They're now facing their corner. We will repeat that. Pass through, face your partner. Pass through, face your partner. Pass through, face your partner. Pass through, do a U-turn back, and do an Alaman left your corner, or turn your corner by the left. So we've given ourselves some more choreography to work with, and all we're utilizing is pass through and face your partner. They've identified partner. We don't identify partner at the mainstream level. I'm going to identify it for you now. My way. This is my interpretation of a partner. Nothing in writing. My partner for my classes is from a static square, from a normal setup, is the person by your side facing the same direction you're facing. Okay? If you're in a line of 4, it's the end and the adjacent center facing the same direction. Got that? Unless the caller says center 4 people do something, then they become partners. We're not talking about adjacent dancers. We're not talking about waves at this point. We're identifying for these group of people who have only been here one night. So we identified a partner for them. Now let's have the sides pass through and do a U-turn back. No, don't do that. Face your partner. Now do a U-turn back. So they're now facing something. They're not going to panic because they don't know any better. They don't know but what this is normal, standard procedure. And if you don't tell them any different, they will never know it. We're going to let them do a square through 4 hands or whatever. Okay? Pass through, face your partner. Looks funny. Hold hands with your new partner. We've identified a new partner for them. Pass through, face your partner. Pass through, face your partner. Pass through. Do a U-turn back. Very good. Pass through, face your partner. Pass through. We're giving them a little different traffic pattern. Face your partner. Pass through, face your partner. Watch this. Watch this. Pass through. Do a U-turn back. Centers twice. Well, what's the definition of U-turn back? U-turn back, you always turn toward your partner, right? Unless flowing direction dictates otherwise. That's the way the definition reads. Some of them did it good and some of them did it bad. So we want to square through 3 now. Okay, centers, pass through, face your partner. Pass through, face your partner. pass through, do an element, left your corner. Now, this is first night of dancing. We're having fun with this. We're having lots of fun. We're doing right and left grands, we're doing pass-throughs, we're doing circle lefts, we're doing circle rights, we're doing walk-arounds, we're doing dos-a-dos, we're doing stars. We're doing a lot of little things, and we're doing a few technical things like this, and we're getting them ready down the way here for a week or 2 or 3 or 4 to teach square through. We're establishing traffic pattern. They're going to practice this for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Probably the week before we get ready to teach our square through, we give them their hands, thusly, heads. Give a right to your opposite, pull by. These are getting smart dancers. Now, face your partner, give a left pull by. Face your partner, give a right pull by. Face your partner, give a left pull by. Very good. Do a do-sa-do. Do an element left. Whatever. So we've established our traffic pattern, and we've now given their hands to work with. And I'll guarantee you, if you practice this and work with it and use it from different arrangements, boy, girl, boy, etc., boy, boy, girl, you will never have any problem with the courtesy turn somewhere in the square through. You just won't have that problem because your traffic pattern is there. They know where they're going. You've practiced it enough. When you finally say, tonight we're going to teach the square through, and here is the definition, and read it to them. Do not depend on your memory. Read it to them. They have a copy of the definitions. They have read it. So they'll probably correct you if you recite it to them wrong. So you read it to them so that you be sure that you've got the proper definition to them. And they're, outside of being callers, these are smart people too. So these people you have in class, they're smart people. They can understand the English language. They can read and they can write, most of them. And so give them credit for that. They have a right to be as smart as you do about these things. And we're in the thing playing games with them. We have 9 people teams. We have 8 people here, and I'm the 9th person, and I'm one in each square, and we have 9 people teams, and we're all trying to execute properly. So if we want to do a wheel and deal, for example, we let our dancers, these 4 get together, and these 4 get together over here, and face any direction you want. I mean, all 4 of you face the same direction in your line. Maybe I didn't make myself clear. Now you get over here. Bring your group right over. I don't care which way you're facing. Just so you're each 4 facing the same. No, stay right there. You're all right. We teach a wheel and deal this way. We get our groups into groups of 4 and let them face any wall or any corner they want. And then we try to get across to them that a wheel and deal is a 4-people movement. You can only wheel and deal your line. You cannot wheel and deal the other people's line. You're only working with these 4 people. We read the definition to them. Then we start explaining to them, and I try to point out with my hands, use hand motions, thusly. We have a couple on the right and a couple on the left facing the same direction. And I'm talking to this line here. My right hand is the couple on the right. My left hand is the couple on the left. All we do is flop the right hand in front of the left hand. Would you do that, please? I'm talking to the good group over here. Then I go over and I show that, of course I don't have a microphone in my hand. It's kind of rough. I go over and show this group the same thing. I point their way. I go face their direction. I have my right hand here, my left hand here. The right hand flops in front of the left hand. Now, if you will notice, you have turned your facing direction 180 degrees. You're facing the opposite wall that you started facing. Therefore, this is the way a wheel and deal will finish. You will finish facing the opposite wall or the opposite corner from which you started. Now, first couple go left, second couple go right, and form your lines again, just like you were. Now, the next time when you hear the caller say, wheel and deal, you will do the things that I Just showed you with my hands. Right hand flop in front of the left hand. Wheel and deal. Aren't they good? Aren't they a good group? I think they're great. First couple go right, next couple go left. Aha! Different, wouldn't it? We have a different right-hand couple and a different left-hand couple now. Now understand, they can be in any arrangement they want to be. We tell them when they get in their groups of 4, if you'd like 2 boys to get together, 2 girls to get together, we don't care. Make your group of 4 any arrangement you want to, and it still works the same way. Your partner is still the end and the adjacent center in each line. So we work as partners in this. Wheel and deal. First couple go right, next couple go left. Now reform your squares. Now am I about to run out of time, Jim? I don't want to. We occasionally, if we got a real good group some night, real good group, and we're dancing away, and we're in past the wheel and deal stage, and we're really getting into it to practice it. We will occasionally do something like, what might take to? Yeah, let's do it anyway. Heads, step up and face your corner, and step to an ocean wave, and do a single hinge, and centers trade and centers run. Bend the line, step to an ocean wave, and the boys run right around one girl. Now, when we're dancing, later on in the time, we will give them a wheel and deal from this position. They've been dancing this wheel and deal for a couple of months now, or 6, 8 weeks, something like that. Okay, we will point out to them here. Now remember, we're in 2 lines of 4, end to end. I'm only saying this because of this group. We're in 2 lines of 4, end to end. Who is the right-hand couple? Would the right-hand couple be the center couple? Yes. Okay, wheel and deal. We're in 2 two-faced lines again. Wheel and deal. Star through. Back up. Back away. Wheel and deal. See? We've done 3 wheel and deals and 1 little star through in between, or slide through, or whatever. So we practice wheel and deal this way when we really get down to practice. In teaching anything, I'd like to thank this group right here. All the group. Thank you. We'd like to use some more people when Jack gets up too. He wants a better group than I had, though. In teaching, we tell our people the first night, we're talking about hearing and listening and communicating, and we tell our people the first night of class that, like I say, we assume you know your sex, and when we go on, it will take the average one of you 100 times hearing a call to be able to do it without thinking, to be able to hear it and execute without thinking about it. At this point in your dancing, you're really good. I mean, you're a good dancer. You can go ahead and talk and laugh and have a good time in your square, and yet you're still hearing everything that comes over the speaker. And this is when you're home free as a dancer. Some of you probably learned these calls in 50 times, hearing them 50. Hear them 50 times, and you've got them. That's the teenagers and the kid. Some of you it will take upward of 150 times. But those of you that it takes 200 times hearing one call to be good at it usually become callers. So this is the way we try to communicate. Communicate with your dancers any way you can. Have fun with them. We've got to have them. I mean, they're nice people. They're going to become friends. They think you as a teacher are their God. They look up to you. So let's don't put them down. Let's play with them. Let's have a good time with them. We communicate with them by sight. We communicate with them by voice, by hearing, and we communicate with them by touch. So let's be sure that every means of communication that you can muster, that you have at your command, chalkboards, whatever you can use to get a point across, use it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernie. The underlying message that Ernie was presenting is the lead-in activities, the preparation for learning how to get people ready to receive the call. And now we have Jack to talk about the actual presentation of the call and how to go about the practice elements in the teaching program.
Thank you very much, Jim. You know, you have to ask yourself, why does it make any difference whether I know something more about teaching or not? It makes a difference for 2 or 3 reasons. Number one, when you're teaching somebody to square dance, if you do an effective job, and I don't really want to get into good and bad, that's a value judgment, and what may be good to some person is bad to another. What we're talking about is effective and ineffective. Those teachers who are very effective can help people learn to square dance with fewer errors and in shorter amounts of time. They can learn to be square dancers who enjoy and dance well with less numbers of practice trials and with fewer errors in the process. And so in a day like we have now, where there's a lot to teach a person who has never square danced before they can even really go to our first open dances, if you become a more effective teacher, then you'll be able to teach your dancers how to do these calls with fewer errors that cause them to make mistakes and in hopefully shorter amounts of time. Now, I'm going to be talking about 3 different aspects, and I'm going to write them up here this time so you can help me keep us going. I don't want to end up on one and not get the other ones in. We're going to talk about modeling as a concept. Practice and learning rate. And those are 3 things that if you get down and get those out of this session, you may be able to make some pretty important changes in some of the things that you're going to be doing with people. Let's take modeling first. First, you have to understand there's a difference between putting on a demonstration and modeling in the sense a teacher uses that. If I'm going to put on a demonstration, I can get 4 couples together and have them come up and put on a demonstration for people to watch and enjoy and be entertained with, but I don't expect them to learn how we did the calls. So they'll watch the whole picture and they'll be able to say it was pretty and enjoyable, but if I ask them what did this person do with their hands or what was the fractional movement these people made, they won't have the slightest idea because they weren't paying attention to any detail. They only wanted to see the overall picture. Modeling is a very important concept for a teacher to use in some cases. I don't try to model every call that we teach because modeling must be very carefully done and well done. But every call where I expect there might be errors or I expect that people will learn more effectively if I model it, then I do model. I put in the papers that you have in your packet a discussion about walk and dodge, which is one of the things we use. So I'm going to use a different call up here just to give you some more material. But I really want to preface this by saying what I want you to pay attention and watch is modeling as a concept, not the call that we're going to teach. I'm not trying to teach you how to teach a given call or to debate the merits of different ways of teaching it. What I want you to understand is how you go about modeling. Here's my process. First of all, I have to decide spin the top is the call that I feel I need to model for my class, and I'll explain why in a minute. About 4 weeks or 5 weeks ahead of the time it's going to come up on the list, I have to sit down and think through what are all the things that are important to me in teaching modeling, teaching spin the top, that I want to be sure the dancers learn. There are several things to me that are very important. One of the major things is that is a continuous movement. From the time you start to the time you end, nobody's feet stop or move out of rhythm. So I have to eliminate the way I used to teach spin the top, which was I'd put them in an ocean wave and say, all right, turn by the right hand half, stop, centers turn left, 3/4 stop, ends move up. I don't want any stops. And so my modeling has to be very sure that I don't introduce any, or I'm building an error in that somebody's going to learn. And sure enough, if you teach them that way, you'll call spin the top, and you'll find some people who stop and don't move up in the wrong places. So that's one thing I want. Another thing I want is I try to teach my dancers to have their hands in ocean waves, palm to palm together, so that no one grasps anybody else's hands. I don't want people to have a hard time getting away from somebody else. They keep their hands together flat. So that's another important thing in the way I'm going to teach this. We've already done a lot of things on Ernie's idea. I want them to know 3/4 fractional movements, and we've been doing this since the first or second night of class. We circle 4 3/4, we do all kinds of movements, promenade 3/4, we chain 1/4, chain 3/4. We do a lot of things to build in the importance of being precise in their fractional movements. So we've already got a good background in that by the time we get to spin the top. Okay, I've thought this through and I made a list. These are the things that I want to teach and I want to be sure are well done. Now I go to my club and I say I need 4 couples to help me at my next class model spin the top. And I get 4 volunteer couples that will come and help me with that. It's very critical that those be among my best dancers. Not when I say best dancer, that's a wrong word. That they all be people who make no errors on spin the top. They don't have to be my best dancers. They can, because that's, again, a quality judgment that I'm not trying to put good and bad into this. But they are people who do spin the top properly. And I can depend on them to do it properly in front of a group. And so I ask them to stay after that night. And we spend another 10 or 15 minutes practicing what I want them to show well in the demonstration. So there's no games with them. When they come, they know their job. And they know that I want a continuous action with the feet every time, and I want hands that do not grasp as they do the arm turns or the turns in the spin the top. All right, now I need a square so that I can show you this. And if I could get a square out of the front rows up here, 4 couples, come up and help me. You don't have to all be paired up early, but just 4 couples that could come and help me for just a minute. We need 3 more. Any place down in here, somebody can come up, not bashful. Even get a man and a different lady. You don't have to have couples or partners already. Come on up. Thank you very much. We need a man right here. Got a man that'll help? Okay, there you go. Good, thank you. 1 more, okay? 1 more. Thank you very much. Now, in our practice session, before we go in front of the class, we talk about all these things and make sure they understand the different things that we're after. So they're very comfortable coming over as models. My models want to show the best possible example of a spin the top that I can generate. So let's have first and third step to the center and turn to face the corner. Step into an ocean wave. Now, I'd like you to check and be sure that there are a number of different ways to make ocean waves, and a lot of you have your own ways, so I'm not trying to teach you how to teach spin the top. What I'm trying to do is teach you how to be detailed and careful about what you model and think that through. So for our purposes, we want the thumb kept in and the hands flat against each other. You may want to turn them so they're just a little cross angle, a little like that, so it's comfortable, but I don't want the thumb wrapped around. Now, when we do a spin the top, from the time we start to the time we end, everybody's feet should keep moving all the time. So there is no stop after we start until you end the call. Spin the top, turn right, turn left 3/4, and the ends move up 1/4. All right? Now, we're going to do it once again, and I'm going to really emphasize that once you start your feet moving, I want you to keep them moving with no stop till you end the call. Spin the top, turn right, turn left 3/4, keep your feet going, and stop. Now, if I was using this as my model square, you can see already we have some differences here that I have to iron out, and that's why we're doing this before they come in front of my class. I don't want to be talking to them about things that we're doing different from each other in front of my class. This we do before we get there. Okay, now I'm going to emphasize once again, the hands are up, palms are up, and the thumbs tucked in, and the palms are palm to palm together, and that the feet must move continuously. Now, I'm going to ask all of you people right here. In fact, everybody can practice with me. I'm going to teach you a signal. I want all of you, when I say go, to put your hand up like this, for that in effect says right on. All right? You don't have to say anything. Just put your hand up. Ready? Go. Everybody. All right, put your hand down. Now, you're going to be watching this demonstration very closely. And I want you all to pick somebody, and at the end of the spin the top, if the person you watched kept their feet going continually from start to end, when I say go, you're all going to signal right on. All right? Here we go. Now, everybody pick somebody and watch them. And here's my crew out here, and they're watching carefully. Spin the top. Turn by the right, turn by the left 3/4, and a move on up. Go. All right. I had one no hand. Did you watch somebody whose feet didn't move? Okay. Did you the same? All right. So we had a couple of people that watched someone whose feet did not move continuously. We're going to try again, gang. Now, all of you have to keep those feet moving. Now, I want you to watch somebody. Everybody be watching. Ready? Spin the top. Turn by the right, turn by the left 3/4, and move on up. Go. We got it. All right. People don't know how to watch a demonstration or a model. My class will sit there, and I'll do this, and I look out, and the person that I was most talking to is sitting here leaning, talking to somebody next to him. They didn't pay any attention and hear a word I said or saw anything I did. So I have to do things like this to make you watch. And I'll do all kinds of things with my class to make them watch. And if I get somebody that's talking, I'll walk down and stand beside them and say, now, did you see that? Did they keep their hands joined? And I'm going to make you watch. I want you to see what we do. That's why we're doing it. This time, watch the hands. And if you notice that all the way through, the hands are flat and the thumb is tucked in, then when I say go, give me that right on signal. All right, here we go. And this time it's not going to be you guys I'm going to watch. It's all that bunch back there. You're going to make the judgment now, all that crew. Ready? Go. Turn by the right, turn by the left 3/4, and move on up. Go. I had some no hands, so we had some that did not keep their hands flat and the thumb not tucked in. We got to do it again. All right, get ready. Here we go. Hands flat. And the thumb tucked in. Everybody ready? Spin the top. Go. I still have some that haven't gotten it right. Okay, you're observing, you're really seeing, and that's why we practice. If I bring my club in to give me a model, my model has to be perfect if I can make it such. So before I put people to do a model in front of my class, we work and work till all these things are worked out and we're right. Now you get that concept. I'm not going to embarrass them by putting them in front of my class and having them do something. I'm telling the class. When they come over, they're the best spin the toppers in the country when we do it in front of the class. Now, you have to find some ways to keep attention on the part of your class and keep them listening, but don't assume that just because you did all this, that they heard you or saw what you did. People are used to watching entertainment, but they're not watching models and being careful in their observation. Now, one of the things that's very interesting about spin the top in this level, and let's say we have now moved. You're doing it perfect. I'm not going to take any more time, but we're doing it now perfect, and we're in front of the class, and we now have introduced spin the top. One of the things that's very interesting about spin the top, you'll observe if you watch him do the spin the top. Everybody just keep your eye on this one person. All right? Spin the top. Turn by the right, turn by the left, move up. Spin the top again. Spin the top again. Spin the top again. One of the few calls in square dancing where you can do one after another and the person will move from the starting position through every one of the 4 positions in the wave. Before he finishes, he's been in every position that's available in the wave. He's practiced every single thing he can do in a spin the top, in 4 sequenced spin the tops. There's not many calls work that way. Most of you have to be more deliberate about your practice, but this is a beauty. You can really work well on this, and you do this a few times with your floor, and they ought to be able to handle spin the top no matter what you do with them. All right, so basically you have this idea. We now have our model square up. We've done this in front of the class 3 or 4 times, carefully illustrated and shown them that the feet move continuously and that the hands are not grabbing. Now I'm going to have them do it in slow motion. Remember, I have to give something up. I'm not going to have them turn by the right stop, turn by the left stop. So when I have my first practice session with a class, I can't just say spin the top because they saw it and have them do it full speed. So we go through it in slow motion. Now I'm going to count it very slow, and we're going to go through spin the top very slow. Ready? Spin the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I still have my continuous motion, my continuous action, and I can get my class through this the very first time they try it, after we've set it up and modeled it carefully and worked up to this. Spin the top slow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we're ready, and we'll have any questions from the class. If they still need to see something else, if they haven't paid attention, I'll have them watch the end person do his part. I'll have them watch a center person do their part. We'll watch all these in great detail. When we're ready, then we say, all right, class, come on up, form your square, put the heads in and face the corner and make a wave, and we start practicing. Okay, thank you very much. That's the general idea. Appreciate your help. You have to be aware that in teaching, we have a lot of different mechanisms to listen and to see things. If you can speak clearly and give very good word pictures, that helps some people learn. Other people have to see very clear and detailed pictures. They have to see them as well as hear about them. And that'll help them learn. So if you do both, if you work out a way that a person can see it in detail, can hear it in detail, then most of your class is going to be successful with their first trials. Okay, that's the basic idea of modeling and the basic message in terms of modeling. It's different than a demonstration. Our intent here is to prepare a person to perform a skilled movement that they are soon going to get up off their seats and come up here and try. They're going to get on the stage, or not on the stage, but on our floor, and do spin the tops. And I'm fully expecting that my job will be done so well that no one will make any errors the first time they try it. That's what I'm trying to do. I'll have prepared using Ernie's ideas. I'll have prepared using modeling. And the first time these guys try spin the top, they're going to be 100% right. And continue to be that all the first 3 nights we do it. All right, so much for modeling. Let me take the next aspect here, practice. There's a saying that a lot of people still use, and that saying is practice makes perfect, but that's just not true. And you have to understand that the real saying is practice makes permanent. If you do not practice something correctly, you will develop a permanent habit of doing it in whatever way you practice it. Lanny mentioned to me, she's a school teacher, and she mentions to me the problem that I've faced many times in school. A lot of young kids somehow never learned how to throw a ball well. Many of those young kids who didn't learn how to throw a ball well grew up to be school teachers. And they're having an awful time trying to figure out how to teach their own classes and their own pupils how to throw a ball correctly. They practiced throwing a ball a lot. They all played many, many games, but they did not practice it correctly. They've built a lifetime habit which defies many of the important rules for throwing a ball and makes it hard for them to both do it themselves and to teach others. So practice makes permanent. Whatever you practice, you're going to learn. Let's make sure that you try to practice correctly. There are 2 forms of practice. The first is called massed practice. And massed practice means that I take a given concept and I practice it many, many times in a short period of time. What you just saw this square doing was mass practice. And by the time I had everybody do 8 to 12 times that spin the top in the kind of thing we were practicing and working up to, I'll have built in massed practice. And mass practice is great because it helps you learn things quickly. If you mass practice, you learn it in a short period of time. The next time we came back, the next class night, we'd mass practice again. Maybe by the third time, I'd be pretty convinced I didn't need to do as much mass practice, and I'd mass practice some more. But now I'm at a point where I can stop mass practice. But you have to know something else about mass practice. You learn quickly with mass practice, but when you stop mass practice, you forget quickly also. So if I mass practice for 3 weeks on spin the top, I'll know it very well at the end of those 3 weeks, and I may even know it for 5 more weeks. But 3 months down the road, if I have done no more spin the tops, I won't remember it. So we shift to a different kind of practice. The first kind of practice, mass practice, if I diagrammed it, would look like this. A whole lot of practice sessions in a short period of time. The other's called distributed practice. And on a planned schedule, I have to lay out a practice schedule that I'm going to deliberately come back and practice spin the tops every so often over a long period of time. Maybe over 12 months. And I'll put this in so maybe at first every 2 weeks I'll distribute practice. I'll be sure to come back to spin the top. Maybe then it'll get bigger and I'll go to every 3 weeks and maybe only once every 4 weeks. As long as I'm not having any errors, everybody's still remembering it, then I'm building in retention in such a way that no one will ever forget it. They'll always be able to spin the top if I go through a good distributed practice schedule following a mass practice schedule. How many people have problems with different calls? We're talking to one caller at noon who has a reservation, has to be real careful every time he says touch, because a whole lot of people do touch a quarter. I don't know about your classes, but I know I teach touch first, and we mass practice it, and we do a lot with it. But I also know that if I don't plan and deliberately put it on a schedule, I quit calling it. All of a sudden, I'm not calling touch anymore. And I have to deliberately have a schedule planned out that reminds me, hey, Murtha, you haven't done touch for the last 3 weeks. It's time to do it again. So we put it back in, and we put it back in. I have people that do divide, and they mass practice that. All of a sudden, they quit calling it, and 5 months, 10 months down the road, the dancer's forgotten what it means. So if you're going to have effective practice, you mass practice to learn quickly, but you must have distributed practice for retention over the long period of time. And if you leave the distributed out, people will forget it. The last thing that I want to talk a little about is learning rate. If I were to take all of this good-looking group right down here and say, let's all meet out at the hotel tennis courts, and we have a tennis pro coming in who's going to teach you tennis today. Before I even walk out the door, I know that I have a learning rate spread of about 1 to 6 in almost any group I work with. Now, it can be severely beyond that if I'm dealing with special education types, but in the normal population, 1 to 5 to 1 to 6 is about as broad as it gets. That means that I might take one caller here out, and if he's going to learn how to hit the forehand stroke in tennis, that it may take him 15 practice tries, and he's got it. And from then on, every time he hits a forehand stroke, he does just exactly what the pro taught him and does it well. He's my number one guy. So I know, and I don't know who it is, but I know I have somebody else out there that if it took him 10 practice tries to get there, it's going to take them 60 practice tries to get to exactly the same skill level. The beauty of it is, after he gets his 60 practice tries, he's as good as this guy. I use it like an analogy. Let's say that you want to go from, I don't know what's around Chicago to Yuba City, California. If you decide that you want to take an airplane and fly out, you can go that way. If you want to take a car and drive out, you can go that way. If you want to ride a bicycle, you can go that way. Each case is going to be different how much time it takes you to get there. But when you're there, you're all equally in Yuba City, California. And when we finish his 60 practice tries against his 10, we're equally skilled with a forehand stroke in tennis. Now that's essentially what we're saying. Every class you teach has that kind of a spread. You can predict it before the first person walks in the door. You don't know who it is or how many or how it's going to break out, but you're going to have a spread. We used to think that spread was caused by genetics. It was caused by what you inherited. Some people just learn slower than others. Now the research says, no, that's not necessarily true at all. They're finding now that the more important variable is your entry-level skill. That the variance among people for entry-level skills is so wide that that causes this learning problem. And if you can somehow do such a good job in teaching in your classes that everybody before they start the next program level has the same entry-level skills needed for the next one, you'll reduce that spread from 1 to 6 to 1 to 1.5. Now, what does that mean in terms of our program? It says if you do such a good job teaching at the mainstream level, that everybody, when they come out of mainstream, is a quality mainstream dancer, all have a very good background in mainstream. When that same class starts learning the plus calls, you no longer have a spread of 1 to 6. Now you can teach every plus call to the whole class almost right along the line. They'll all have the same amount of practice and they'll learn it as they go. So it's important to understand that there's nothing wrong with a person who happens to need more practice tries to become skilled at something. That's the way it is with any group that hasn't been pre-selected. And you need to accommodate in your lessons ways to help each person become skilled enough to be able to then move on to the next step. Okay, I think that I better stop there and let Jim kind of lead us into some questions. Thank you very much.
Why don't you guys take the microphone back to the table? We've been laying a fairly heavy trip on you. There's a lot of information contained in what Jack and Ernie have had to say. We have floor microphones, and if any of you would like to ask questions or make contributions to our discussion of teaching, and particularly the communication aspects of teaching, we welcome your participation. One question I had for Jack this morning, and let me ask it again, with respect to the distributed teaching, it has been my practice to use a checklist like the one that Bob Osgood supplies from Sets in Order, and that reminds me to do each of the calls that I've taught at each one of my sessions, and I try very hard to get the full list in each time. They begin to drop off after a while, but does it impair the effectiveness of my distributed practice if I don't leave the progressively longer gaps along the way, or is it just as effective if I do it every week?
It is distributed practice, and it won't impair it if you don't leave progressive gaps as long as you're continually coming back. However, there is one element that gets involved if you're trying to do every call each time. You may not be getting enough practice with some of the calls. As an example, I find every once in a while doing a do paso from a circle gets away from me and my dancers. I mass practice that a lot and get to the point where we never have errors. But if I don't keep coming back on a practice schedule pretty often and doing it several times when I come back, then it gets away from us. They can do do pasos in all other ways, but from a circle, they make mistakes. And so you have to be sure that in doing everything every time, you're getting enough practice trials with each one to keep it up. Or it's not going to, you've got to have enough on your distributed practice so people are going to keep working with it.
Fine. For those of you using the floor mic, would you identify yourself before you ask your question?
Carl Edwards from Kansas. 2 questions for Jack. First, when you are modeling ocean wave figures, can you not do it just as effectively with 2 couples in one ocean wave rather than a full square? And the second, when you have your ocean wave formed for modeling, do you ask the end people to have their free hand up with palm forward to facilitate the left turn in the center?
Okay. Answer to the first question, yes, you can work with 2 couples instead of 4. because of the way I practice it, I do work with 4 couples, because I want not only to be able to work and keep working with parallel waves, but I also want end-to-end waves. And I can't get that concept of end-to-end waves over with only 2 couples. So I do work to get some of the fractional movements, the continuous action. I may have a square and have only 1 and 3 do it the first time. But before I put people on the floor, we're working with all 8, mainly so that I can be sure they are seeing this. I try to constantly keep coming back and giving them opportunity to do end-to-end waves as well as parallel waves. I want them to understand that. So I can do the one, but not the other. What was the second question?
Palms up on
Oh, the person who's on the end, palms up. I haven't really made a point of that, and it's probably something I ought to do. It's probably a good idea. I don't tell them really much what to do with a hand that's not active at that given time. I've dealt more with the active hands, and that probably is a good idea.
The reason that I asked the question, my experience has been that when your new dancers first start to do it, if they don't have their left hands up when they go into that first right hand turn, they have trouble finding each other's left hand in the center.
As I look out here at this august body, I find it difficult to imagine that the wealth of teaching experience that is displayed before me does not contain a few suggestions for communication that might not be shared. Surely you are not so tight with your ideas that you wouldn't be willing to make a small contribution to our... I've found in my own Callers Association that I very often have gotten some of my best teaching ideas from callers who have just started teaching, because they are rethinking it much more intensely than I have done in the past few years. And I would urge any of you that have found effective means of communicating any of the square dance terminology that we teach to share it with us. Yes?
Ralph Hay from Colorado. You mentioned, Jack, I think that you did a lot of teaching from the circle, which I've always found to be effective also. However, we had quite a session this morning on teaching by definition. When you teach from a large circle, you have to identify your partners by sex, do you not? Does that create any problem then when you go to squares?
Well, I do teach in circles, but not to the point where I find any problem with that. And I don't recall very many things that I do in circles that would not be standard, normal arrangements. Maybe some half-sashayed, but hardly ever in circles with 2 men and 2 girls as partners. So you're probably right, but I don't really try to get those concepts over in what I do in circles. I do a lot with those concepts. I spend quite a bit of time teaching our dancers to have like the heads pass through, separate round 1 to make lines of 4, and then teach them so they can do Pass the Oceans with 2 men and 2 women, to set up my opportunities then to do the spin the top thing we did and things like that. So by the time we get up to here, we're doing pretty well at being able to get quickly into formations without any problem that mix men and women in every kind of combination.
Bob McVeigh, San Antonio, Texas. I sometimes have trouble teaching people, say, into the plus movements that have been dancing mainstream for some time, that have learned the moves incorrectly. And any suggestions on how, most of them don't want to learn something that they feel they know already. And would be interested in any comments or suggestions of ways to...
Ernie, do you want to try to deal with that? I have some experience with that.
We all share your problem. Ernie has the solution.
Yes. I find that the higher we go in square dancing, the more things we have that are combinations of things we already know. So if they're taught properly at the basic level, we're home free. At the plus level, at the A1 level, the A2 level, we can talk people into doing things they don't know how to do. Maybe things don't flow exactly like we want them to. You don't have the left side and the right side. But for example, when I'm doing a track 2, I'll say double pass through, leaders, partner, trade, everybody pass through, trade, by, and touch. What is it? It's a track 2. Well, here again, I'm establishing a traffic pattern in this program. And if they haven't been taught properly at the basic level, Bob, you've got to go back and teach them properly.
I'd like to
whatever thing
endorse
that
one
doing.
too. That you not only, if they have been taught properly, you're very fortunate. It's rare these days, unless you've done the job yourself, to find that they've been taught to your satisfaction. Even when you've done the job yourself, they may not have been taught to someone else's satisfaction, but they surely should be to yours. I have found, as Ernie mentions, that it's necessary to go back and reteach a substantial portion of the preceding programs as part of the learning process in whatever program I'm now teaching. If I'm doing advanced, I need to reteach the plus. And I accept that as a solid responsibility. It does go back to Jack's point that those things that have been improperly learned are very difficult to reteach. You will spend a long time correcting bad habits. And if there's one message that comes through from this, it is, please let us all share together the responsibility for doing the mainstream teaching job well. That's the foundation on which everything is built. And if that's done poorly, we're all in trouble, whether those people remain in the mainstream program for the rest of their lives, which many of them will do, or whether they choose to move on to other programs. The basic teaching job is the one that matters most.
I find that they want to move on. Once they're out of mainstream, they want to go into plus. They don't want to take the CALLERLAB recommendation or our recommendation that they dance the mainstream a year. They want to go on because their friends are on. They want to move along. And if I don't take my groups on into the plus program, they're going to go somewhere else where they will take them into the plus program. Consequently, I say I will take you into my plus program, which gives me an opportunity to practice them over and over and over again at their mainstream, in the mainstream program, and teach them plus. I take a year to teach 26 plus figures. I don't take that long to teach them, but I use that much time to teach them because I want them to dance the mainstream a year. In essence, that's what they're doing. They're learning some plus movements and dancing mainstream. And I think this is the only way we can do it if we're going to keep the dancers happy. And I guess that's what we're trying to do, because what they want is names, right? They want names.
I'm not sure I'm going to buy that just 100%, because I happen to be sitting at lunch with some people who operate in an area where over the past couple of years the plus program has been not holding its own quite so well and the mainstream program has been growing. I know that it's true in New England that that's not the case. In our area, where we have a high population density and a high square dancer density, in numbers that is, the plus program was so well established the plus one program particularly was so well established when we combined them, that we've increased mainstream dancing slightly, but the dancers are still heavily interested in moving on as Jack describes, as Ernie describes. But I think there are some areas in the land where mainstream is alive and well. I'd surely love to hear that that's the case. Let me, just for my own satisfaction, ask the question. How many of you are dancing in an area where there is an adequate supply, by your own judgment, of mainstream dancing available, and class members generally dance at the mainstream level for at least a year after their graduation program? I wish it was more, but I'm glad to see that much.
Let me address more directly, specifically the question that you ask about what do you do when you have that, because they're giving you the ideas of going into this and moving it with other with the programs they've got, and that's a super solution. But name a call for me that you're thinking of when you say, I've got a dancer who's learned to do this wrong and is doing it wrong. What do I do about it? What's a call? Give me an example. Which one?
Turn through. Good example.
Turn through? All right. Turn through. So you have a problem, all right? Then again, you're back in the same situation we were in earlier. I have to make a decision now. I've got a person, maybe only one person, who's making errors in turn through. Maybe it's two. And they make them constantly. So I have to figure out what's the error. What are they doing wrong? I have to sit down and really think through what they're doing and what I want them to do. And I find most of the time in my program what they're doing wrong is that they are not pulling by, letting go, and coming back out to a position back to back. That most of the time they'll stop if there's an error. The error in my program that I see is they end up side by side. So I have to stop and think about that. Now, to reteach is just what Ernie said. You not only have the job of teaching it right, but you've got to go back and undo what's already been done and reteach the thing, and that's more time consuming, it's harder to do. And you can get people very aggravated at you. I have some people that's not turned through. It's like doing a recycle with two boys together and two girls together and say, I don't want to do a recycle that way in the first place. Why are you telling me what I'm doing wrong is I've got to learn something else because I don't care about that something else. But the key point is that first you have to analyze what's the error and what do I want. Then you have to go back, and if it's only one or two people in the whole group, you may want to find a way to ask them to come a half hour early and say, I've got 3 couples who are good dancers or come over early. Would you come over early with me? And I want to take a little extra time to just help you go back over a call or two. And I have people that do that. I do that with my group, and they're willing to if they know they've got a problem. Sometimes they come to me and tell me I've got a problem. They say, I get through this every time, but I don't know what I'm doing. People keep pulling me through, but I don't know what I'm doing. Will you help me? So basically, that's the first thing. You've got to carefully identify what the error is, what's supposed to be done, and then get a way to go back and carefully teach to that person what's right and give them practice in it again. Only it's more detailed and harder to do.
Does anybody have a thought about why it is that turn-through is that much of a problem for us? I know that I teach turn-through very carefully, emphasizing the walk-away aspect of it. It doesn't take. Those same people have trouble later on, and I don't know why that is. That's one that's got me stumped.
Could I show something when we hear these questions?
Yeah, go.
Frank Keyser, Belleville, Illinois. My thought on this is I think so much of the time a turn through, for example, we'll use it a swing through and turn through to a left allemande, and we don't use it from other positions than this. If we would give the dancers enough exposure, I think they'll learn it.
Certainly practice, back to Jack's distributed practice theory, we don't practice it enough with a full let go and walk by. That's certainly one aspect.
Norm Croshaw from California. Ernie was my instructor, and I hope that you guys won't hold it against me. But anyway, I do it from lines of 4, the whole bit. I explain, I go through, I try to find 3 or 4 different ways of explaining. I still get people to not, I will say a turn through and go ahead and cue it, and they'll give a right hand shake pull by. Now that's the problem that I'm working with. Now I realize some people, like you said, catches on early in the stage of the game and catches on 250 times down the way. We've gone 300 already. We've sat there and gone through it with them between tips, before class, the whole bit. They don't see the concept of it because there's only 2 people working it. We've tried it with 8 people working it in the square. You just can't get through to them. Sometimes you get through to them a little bit more. You get the turn, but like you say, you don't get to pull by. But, no matter what I say, I've got one club that I don't know what I'm going to do with, but I'm still working with. I call left allemande, they do a do-side-do. I call a right and left through, they do a star through. But that's...
You don't have a solution either. Gentleman behind you is going to give us a solution.
Okay, I'll give you the solution, my solution anyway. With a turn through, we're going someplace. Let's tell them where they're going. Like a squared up position, have the heads do a U-turn back. And say, now this is where you will be when you complete a turn through. Now face back in again with the right forearm. Reverse your facing direction. Walk back the way you came from. And if they know where they're going, they won't have a problem. And another thing, this is again just a bit of humor, but if we could find the fella that taught swinging dos-a-dos, we could have him teach all these other things and we'd have no problem.
Let me give you one other strategy for dealing with what you're talking about. If you're having problems with turn through and people seeing it, you can exaggerate and help people sometimes. As an example, if I was really having the problem you're talking about to that degree, then I might have first and third turn through and sides do a right and left through. I'd crash right down the middle to make sure that no one could be holding on to anybody else and get away with it. Now I'm going to exaggerate the call until they see it. When they finally see it, then I can do other things. But if I'm having that problem because they just aren't perceiving where the thing ends and not getting far enough away, then I'm going to exaggerate. I'm going to make it real big and very obvious. And then 2 and 4 do a turn through, and 1 and 3 right and left through down the middle, or square through in the middle and something else. So that instead of just taking a little step back to where they are, they're going to turn through and walk out 3 more steps. So they really leave a gap until they get the idea that it's not ended till they're away from that other guy. So that's another strategy I use sometimes when that's a problem. I exaggerate to make sure they see it.
Sounds like the underlying message is still a variation of distributed practice. Yes.
Name is Coco Sutton from Oregon. A question. Do any of the callers tell the dancers which foot to start the movement with to make the body flow easier? And also the timing. Example, square through.
I do on timing, but not on the foot. I never emphasize a starting foot.
What is the difference with a man starting with his left foot on a square through and a woman with her right foot? Is it easier?
It's uncomfortable for one of them. It certainly is, and that's a function of that. That's something that happens in many square dance calls. I have not ever tried that. Have you?
I'm not the caller.
That's a cop-out.
A square through is what? Anyway. 8 counts, takes 8 steps to do a square through?
10, I hope.
Well, it takes 2 to start and 2 to get to the next one. So we're talking about 10, and before we get to the right and left through or whatever, we're talking about 2 more. Then we do another square through, and which foot am I going to be on when I get ready to start that second one?
One of them. Yes.
Now you got us thinking, Ernie. Jim Howard from New Jersey. On a turn-through situation, and just sitting here thinking about it, I don't particularly have the problem with my dancers, but there's a traditional figure, and I don't know the name for it. I use it all the time on one-nighters, but I try to call it in English. I send a hit number 1 man out to the right, have him turn his right-hand lady by the right hand, come back to his partner. And then across the street to the opposite lady. And
seems
to the
like
left-hand
I've
lady.
heard that somewhere.
And I use that, I'm not sure what some of our traditional callers can probably give us the word. What is it? Probably
Sally
so.
Gooden.
Sally Gooden, that's right. And I use that, and if I find I'm having trouble with a turn through, I'll go back to that. Instead of just having number 1 guy, I'll have the head 2 guys do it. And the side 2 guys. They get in the idea, and you can do it with the girls, and they got the idea that they got to go make that turn and come all the way back. And they seem to start picking it on up. But we have had the problem in our area, and I'll agree with it. It's a problem.
Thank you. Yeah.
Question for Ernie Kinney. My name is Ray Duval, and I'm from Hollis, New Hampshire. When you were talking about the teaching methods in the beginning, you were showing certain calls, and you went through the names of many calls. How many calls do you teach on the first night?
Depends on my group, of course. I have a lesson plan made out that might carry me through. Now I don't use the recommended teaching order. I teach a walk around in a seesaw in a big circle before I get them into squares. Before I teach a do-sa-do, in other words. So we're going down to 22 and 23 at that point, but then not all the way down. Probably 15 the first night, enough to get them playing games and having fun and chaining the girls. And now you're not talking about right and left through, but I teach a courtesy turn. I say pass through and face your partner. They know how to do a pass through. They know how to do a separate. They know how to split two after they get into squares. And I'll use a little move for a singing call. Even progress to corners. If I've got a good group, if I got the right group, that on this particular night, I will progress them to their corners in a singing call toward the end of the evening. Pass through, separate round 1 into the middle, pass through, split the outside 2 and go round 1, come down the middle, pass through, separate round 1 into the middle, pass through and swing your corner. If they're real good, you got to watch your timing when you're doing a song. You may have to have them split the outside two again around one and then swing their corner, because some of them will hurry and some of them won't. So I will play games with them all evening long and let them know that they can dance, can progress to their corner. And not exactly like a one-night stand. I do a little more than a one-night stand than I do the first night. But we want them to practice, and we want them to play, and we want them to come back.
I think the consensus is with the other callers that I've checked with, that's about the same thing. It ranges between 12 to 15 calls, so you're there anyhow. But my second question was...
Before you get to the second question, let me put in one strong dissenting voice. Because I am working very hard to teach the art of listening during the early sessions, I try to restrict my teaching to no more than 6 calls for the first 4 weeks. I'm teaching listening.
Right. My next question was on teaching a promenade. You were showing I believe you were in a circle, and you were teaching the promenade by the men kind of turning to face the girl and pushing on her hand and then taking her left hand and promenading that way. Is that correct?
I was having the men walk forward into the inside.
Right. Is that the recommended way of teaching the promenade?
Promenade with hands in front?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And my third question was for Jack, who was teaching about practice and learning, not the learning rate, but probably modeling. How do you get away from, how do you solve the problem if a caller, like I filled in for a caller one night, and as I took over a class, I went and I started calling recycle, assuming they had already learned recycle. When I called recycle, the floor stopped. And I said, I take it your caller has not taught you recycle. And they said, well, yeah, he taught us recycle, but you didn't finish it. And I says, I'm sorry, what was I supposed to say? And they said, well, you're supposed to say recycle Michael.
When you take over another caller's class, when in Rome, do what the Romans do. I'll tell you, though, seriously, that's a big problem for me, too, because I've had callers come to me and give me a list and say, my class knows all these calls. And, boy, when I start calling for the class, if they learned them with him, they sure don't know them the way I do them. And I've heard some atrocious horror stories about callers at that point saying, gee, you guys don't know these calls very well, or your caller sure didn't do a very good job of teaching them, or something like that. And I sure hope, if you do nothing else, if you run into those things, you don't do anything to put down the caller that's their own club caller, whose substitute you are, and you do the best you can to try and figure that floor out like every other floor and do a good job they have a lot of fun with. I just wouldn't plan to teach very many things that night.
Last question.
If he could set me up with one thing, that'd be enough.
Go.
Randy Doherty from Minnesota. I understand Jack's learning rate thing from 1 to 6, and it makes sense to me, but I was wondering, a question for the three of you. If you have a Charlie Leftfoot that has a learning disability, have you had to tell him to try bowling or anything?
I have tried that late in the class and found it to be a very uncomfortable situation for everyone. I have recently discovered that by actively not encouraging him the first night, I have had very high success at his non-continuance.
I guess my problem is I don't see him quick enough. I don't know if I have too big a group or what.
I've been able to spot him pretty early on, and surely I lose some that might be valuable members of the community.
I have
the risk
answer.
I have to take.
Have the answer. Stand up, Lanny.
He's not going to play.
Have Lanny tell him.
You're lucky. Is it quick? We got it.
Bob Hullop from Wausau, Wisconsin. When do you start teaching your basic positions? I know you teach the basics, but when do you start the positions?
First
I'd like
night.
an answer on that.
First night. Absolutely. Everything.
So we're all agreed on the term. Position means the place an individual occupies within a formation.
Yes.
Right.
And we start from the very beginning. We're